Holdout, and you're tuned in to Rolling Out.
What is going on, everybody? My name is Malik Brown, here for Rolling Out, Meet the Author, and today I have the pleasure, the honor to speak with Miss Ladee Hubbard, author of The Last Suspicious Holdout. Miss Ladee, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Great. I'm glad to speak with you today about this new book that you have coming out. But just before we dive deep into everything, just let the people know, what inspired you to write this book? Where were you when you thought of this idea for The Last Suspicious Holdout?
Well, the book took a very long time to write, but it was all written in New Orleans, which is where I live. And I didn't start writing until after Katrina. So in a way, Katrina it inspired me to start writing and sending my work out. I mean, I wrote before, but I didn't send it out to be published until then. So, yeah.
And just the backstory of this book, where did it come from? Where were your inspirations for writing this?
Well, the book is it's a collection of short stories, and they're all set in the same Gulf Coast community. It's a Black community between the years 1992 and 2007. And they together sort of form a chronicle of the transformation of the neighborhood during that period. So I was very interested in the 20 years leading up to Obama's election as president. So that's what I was trying to write about. Yeah.
And what were the things that you kind of learned through those 20 years, through that time period, when just a whole bunch of ideas and stories that you heard about?
Well, I went through it. I remember them. I'm old enough to have lived through them and remember them. And I just think it was a lot of things that were happening were very interesting to me, and some of them had to do with language. So sort of like the generation coming up post civil rights movement, and there was talk. I don't know how seriously people took that it was like a post-racial America, and yet there's all these things going on, and there's all these things people are dealing with, and it didn't really seem like it didn't really seem like collectively there was a voice really that was being listened to in terms of articulating a reality that a lot of people were facing. So I find it very interesting from the vantage point of where we are now to think about that particular period of time as well. Yeah.
And you talk about, not having that voice, talking about reality. Just why do you think it's important to tell these stories now so that voice can be out there and people can understand what was going on?
Well, I think that obviously the cultural and political context has changed so much. It's very, very different now, right? But it didn't come from nowhere. It came, it's always been there. And I think there was a lot of things that were repressed and were not fully, there was a lot of unfinished business during that period that was not really addressed or dealt with. And it directly relates, in my mind, to the America that we live in today. So yeah, I think it's important to know where things come from and to acknowledge how history sort of impacts the present. Yeah.
And I know, I read a snippet, and you talked a lot about the Black experience. Just why is it important for us now? We've been through a lot these past 2 years. Especially George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. Just the Black experience. Why is it important to highlight the Black experience now and be able to get that out into the world?
Well, in part, as a writer, I'm writing about the Black experience because I'm writing about my experience. So it's really it's just my perspective. I'm writing about my experiences, and but I do think they have a wider significance and a wider meaning. race has been pretty instrumental to how this country operates, right? It's an important part of the United States and what the US is and how it constitutes itself and how it functions. And so, yeah, so the Black experience is a very important part of understanding that. Appreciating that is a very important part of understanding the United States as a whole.
And you say, you know, you talk about it's your experience. So without giving away the book, could you tell us, you know, some of your experience just through the Black experience?
Well, I mean, I am Black. I'm a Black woman. So my experiences are Black woman experiences. I can't speak for all Black women, or I can't speak for the whole collective Black experience, but you know, I can speak from my perspective. Yeah. So a lot of the stories are set. It's kind of a mixture probably of New Orleans and the community in Florida, actually, where I spent a lot of time growing up. So I spent a lot of time with my grandparents when I was growing up. And a lot of these stories wound up sort of being inspired by the experiences I had there and people around me. It's not always me talking in the book. There's a lot of different characters are featured in each of the stories. Some of the characters are in more than one story because they interact with each other, of course. So it's things I heard or things I saw or things I experienced. And that's pretty much what the book comes from. Yeah.
And just going to the title, just where the, you know, inspiration come from, the title, where, you know, what is the last suspicious holdout?
Well, it's actually, there is a story, a specific story in there called The Last Suspicious Holdout that I believe, I forget sometimes, but I think it's 2001. Yeah, so I think that the idea, I think that there were a lot of, I don't know how to put this. There was a lot of pressure to think that a lot of social problems had been resolved, that the title kind of speaks to that, to someone who's not quite convinced. That's really what it references. That specific story is actually about a fast food franchise and the interaction between a fast food franchise and a community center that's very important to the neighborhood, the community, and they're sort of negotiating over a communal garden that's there and what it means and what it stands for. But that literally, that's what it has to do with as a part of the collection as a whole. I think it was sometimes hard to fully grasp what was going on because there was so much obfuscation in terms of the language, right? Because supposedly, I guess all race problems were in the past. So much had been solved with the civil rights movement. And yeah, so that's what that speaks to. Yeah. A lot of things are easier to see in retrospect, always, too. Yeah.
Always. And you know, you talk about, you know, you have different perspectives from different people in this book. Just how important was that for you to put all of this in the book? And you know, so anybody can relate to this, you know, like anybody can relate to this. When maybe a kid's talking or maybe somebody else is talking, just how important is it to be relatable when writing a book?
I don't know if I think about being relatable. Honestly, I don't know if that's like my goal is to be relatable. I'm trying to get to some kind of truth. And so that what you see, I mean, I really did want to write about the community as a whole. So it's like multi-generational and people doing all kinds of things in there. But that is kind of what the book is about. So for me, it was more about just trying to, I don't know, get to some kind of truth in terms of an experience. So I honestly, I don't think my first thought is to be relatable. I would love it if it's relatable, but that's not, I don't really write from there. Do you know? It's hard to write. It's hard to be honest when you write. So yeah.
And what kind of gets you up to write? What kind of fuels you to write? Just motivates you?
I don't know. I just kind of came out like that. I just like writing. I've always liked writing, always. It's very important to me as a human being to write. And that's just, I just seem to come out like that, honestly.
That's great. That's all. Hey, look, look. That's great, though. That's great. That's great. So when writing this book, what were some of the things that you liked most about writing this book?
Well, each of the stories in it is one community. It's a lot of different perspectives. So I think that writing each story was really a unique experience or a unique journey. For me, they're all structured very differently. So yeah, I don't know. I relate to each and every story in that book in a totally different way. Like it's saying something totally different for me. And yet it's all part of a collective whole, I hope. And I hope it makes sense in that way. But they're all about totally different things or totally different dynamics. So yeah.
And I know you say it took you a while to kind of write this book, right?
Mhm.
So were there any like hard things about writing a book? Just processing it. Just what were kind of the battles of just trying to get this book finished?
Yeah, it took a really long time. I've written 2 novels and I started the collection before I started writing those 2 novels. And actually my first novel, The Talented Ripkins, the first chapter of it started as a story that I originally thought of as part of this collection as well. But then it just the characters kind of went off and took on their own lives. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me. It's hard writing a short story. I kind of always, I don't know why. I mean, some people wouldn't do that. I just wrote a whole lot of stories all set in the same kind of, it's half real, half imaginary community. And they were always had a little date. I give them a little date. They all took place in the same time period too. So it's interesting. It's very interesting because I've changed a lot as a writer since that. The first story, actually, that's the first story in the collection was the first story I published, and that was back in 2009. Yeah. So I've changed a lot as a writer as well. So I can see all that when I look at all of them together. So yeah.
And from 2009, I mean, to now, I mean, of course, I'm pretty sure you've definitely grown as a writer, but
Mhm.
are there any inspiration like from other writers that you get, any authors that you look up to, to get any ideas from?
Well, I'm very, very much inspired by Toni Morrison. I talk about Toni Morrison a lot because she really meant a great deal to me and was definitely truly an inspiration. I read her for the first time when I was younger, when I was in college. And so she was actually one of the first, I think, Black women writers I had read because I didn't have the opportunity to read. I didn't have the opportunity to read Black authors when I was in high school. And so then, I was really struck by, wow, someone is writing about something that I can relate to and about experiences and that I can relate to. And so that was really startling and beautiful. And then she's so kind of formally fascinating in terms of how she structures her stories and the use of language. So I think it really, really opened up for me what the possibilities of fiction were. So she, in a lot of ways, because as I said, I came out writing, but I used to write poetry. But she really opened up for me a sense of what was possible with telling stories, and also that stories can access a different and deeper kind of truth sometimes. Do you know what I mean? Like trying to write about history or it's just interesting. It's like sometimes there's certain things that are accessible, I think, through like art, like different forms of art that can't really be accessed like through critical thought and stuff like that. So really, and I think she's the one that made me kind of understand that.
And just speaking on her, and just looking on a broader perspective, just how important is it for Black writers and readers to have their stories told?
Oh, it's extremely important. Yeah, it's extremely important. And it's not always easy. I know. People need to, I think it's important to remember how important your voice is and to respect your own voice and to respect your own perspective and to realize that it's valuable. It's extremely valuable because I think a lot of people are told that their experiences don't matter, their perspectives don't matter, and it's not true. And I think it takes a lot of strength to sort of work through that. So it's extremely important. Yeah.
And of course, you say voice very important. But for that young Black lady that's out there, and she's reading your work and she's inspired by what you do, because you look like her, she looks like you. What advice could you offer to those people that desire to be an author?
That is the desire. That is what I said. It's very hard. You have to know your own worth. There's this, so someone says that an elderly character in that first novel says that you have to know your own worth because sometimes there's no one else that's going to tell you what your worth is. And I know I'm laughing, but it's not really a joke. And I know it's not a joke, but that's something that motivated me. I know was the thought that there was somebody that needs to hear what you have to say. And I still think about that. Sometimes I need to think about that there is somebody that needs to hear what I have to say. Do you know what I mean? So you're talking to somebody, do you know? Yeah, just like somebody was talking to you, hopefully, So and that gives me a lot of courage in terms of trying to be a writer personally. And I think it's an important thing to remember. Yeah.
And for literary success, what does that look like to you? When it's all said and done, what do you think really success means in literature?
Do you mean in a piece of literature, like, or as a writer?
As a writer.
Well, literally for me, success would mean being able to keep writing. That's what being a successful writer would mean, is to be able to keep writing, because it's hard. It's hard, and yeah, it's not, it's not the most lucrative enterprise often. So it's one of those things that you do, or most people do because it's like I said, it's a calling, and I love writing. It's very important to me. So yeah, that I think I want to keep writing. I want to be able to keep doing it, to be honest. Do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just thinking of a book, what do you think are the qualities of a great book, of making a great book?
I like so many different types of books. I read so many different genres and so many different types of books. And so there's a lot of things that can make a book great. I don't know. I think maybe if they hit on, like I said, I do think that a certain level of honesty is important. Like if they hit on something, sometimes books are very dishonest, but there's something real about how they're dishonest that I appreciate, So yeah, it depends. It provokes a reaction, And I mean, yeah, maybe it provokes a reaction, but I do think it's there's something in it. There's something in it, but it's hard for me to think of like specific qualities because I do like a lot of different types of books,
Definitely. And thinking about The Last Suspicious Holdout, what do you want people to take away from this book at the end of the day? What's the message that you're trying to get through when people are reading this book?
Well, I kind of want people to think about that period of time. Yeah, I kind of want to, I mean, I think it was very, very important. I think it was very historically important period of time. And I want people to think about what communities were going through during that period of time. And also on a personal level, I think that there's a lot of stuff that maybe happened when I was younger, and that it was only in retrospect that I could understand it. So it's for me, it's part of understanding it. But again, too, I do think that the state we're in right now is not something that just happened. Like, a lot of preceded and led up to it and facilitated it. And I think it's important to maintain consciousness and awareness of that, and to think about it a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. So, and again, I do love all these characters. I love all of the characters in my book. So in some ways it is kind of a I don't know. I don't know what to call it, but I do love them, even if they're hard, you know? So
Definitely, yeah. And when you just explaining that, it kind of just made me think about, about history. When I was in school, the history books, they really didn't give you everything that you really, really wanted to needed to know. But, just for this book specifically, how do you think this book can help the younger generation just be better educated and understand the things that were going on in that time?
that's an interesting question. I don't know how, I mean, I hope it would. Again, it's like I'm trying to work towards a certain level of honesty in my own work. But I do think that history is really important. And I know there are a lot of debates right now about whether history should be taught at all to students, which is really, and I think that's just tragic and ridiculous, because it did happen and it's still happening today. Yeah, it's very, very important. And I mean, maybe that's why people get so bizarre about not wanting not wanting people to talk about kind of the obvious. Do you know what I mean? So that's something to think about as well, like why it is so controversial just to talk about it. Yeah.
For you, what's next for you? Do you have anything planned? And any more writing ideas, any more books to come in store? What's next for you, Miss Ladee?
Yeah, no, I'm working on another novel right now. I'm yeah, I'm very excited about it. So it's a totally different thing, but yeah, I want to write another novel soon.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you, Miss Ladee, for coming on. Before you go, I want to ask if you could give three tips to people aspiring to be writers, to be readers. What would you tell them?
I would say it's very, very important to read as much and as widely as possible, and to really think about what you like when you read and what you don't like when you read, and to try and figure out why is something working for you and something else isn't. I would say it's very important to write, and again, to believe in your own voice and to keep pushing. Do you know what I mean? Because it isn't easy to get published and things like that. So you really, it does take a certain amount of stamina to get through, but it's worth it. And again, as I said before, there's somebody that needs to hear it. Okay, that's what I would say.
Preach, preach, preach. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Miss Ladee, for coming on and speaking with us about your book, about everything that you have going on. Let the people know where they can find you on social media. If where they can find the book, and just this is your time to shine.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, the book should be available, at your local bookstore. If it's not, you can ask for it, but it's definitely on Amazon, and it's in stores now around the country. It came out on Tuesday. So yeah. Thank you.
First. No, thank you. Thank you. You heard it here first, people. Look, you know where to find The Last Suspicious Holdout by Miss Ladee Hubbard. Make sure you guys go grab the book. Thank you, Miss Ladee, again for coming on and speaking with us, and prayers for future success for you.
Thank you very much. It was very nice talking.